Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. We will be getting started shortly. Hello, Jyoti.
Hi, Ade. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. And you?
I'm doing great, doing great. Excited for this one.
Likewise, looking forward to it.
Yeah, looking forward. I believe we have Esha on the call as well. Esha, if you're on the call, can you please turn on your cam? Okay. Welcome, everybody. We will be getting started shortly. Hey, Esha.
Hi, Ade. Hi, everyone.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. And I believe we have Anthony on the call as well, just joining. So we'll have Anthony come on and then we'll get started. Okay. Anthony, you can please turn on your cam if you're in. Okay. Just want to get a confirmation from Anthony that he can hear us.
Yeah, I'm with you. Just change into Wi-Fi, stronger one. Be there shortly. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Okay, just a message to the OLE team, production team. We're about to get started. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the OLE Consulting Monthly PM Roundtable. My name is Ade Adeyemi. I'm the CEO at OLE Consulting. If you're joining us for the first time, OLE Consulting is a management consulting firm. We specialize in IT professional services in the areas of staffing, training, and project delivery services. So we do connect IT professionals to opportunities within the industry. We also provide training and employment placement for individuals that are looking to get into the fields of project management and business analysis. We're excited to have you on the call today, and we thank you for joining us at the monthly PM Roundtable. To get us started, I'd like to give you a welcome to the monthly PM Roundtable. Our objective for the PM Roundtable is to create a forum where our PM and BA community can share information, network, discuss best practices, industry trends, and troubleshoot project issues. Our goal is to grow leaders, and we believe this platform and today's session will further enhance that goal of making the folks within our community become leaders in their own chosen field, within their industry, within their workplace, and for their community. Today's roundtable, our topic is around achieving your career goals in 2022. This topic is quite exciting for me because I find that goal setting, achieving goals is something that never gets old. There's certain topics that we've had in the past that folks might feel like, oh, you know what, I've reached a certain level in my career, I don't need that topic. But today's topic is very generic, very broad, because goal setting never gets old. I'll give you an example. When I was a teenager, I had a different set of goals. When I was in my 20s, I had a different set of goals. Now, I'm not trying to age myself. The point I'm trying to make is goals, as we evolve as people, as professionals, our goals change, and achieving those goals requires certain principles, requires certain practices, and I'm excited for the panelists that we have on the call today, some of the exciting things they will be sharing with us. But before we go into those shares, those things they're going to be sharing with us, we'll start with some introductions. We'll get the panelists to talk about their background, talk about who they are, where they've been, and we'll be excited to get everyone to know more about the panelists. So we'll start with some introduction. First panelist to be introduced is Jyoti Naya. Welcome, Jyoti.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Ade. I'm Jyoti Naya, Organizational Delivery and Governance Senior Manager at Tangerine Bank. I'm part of the Enablement PMO office at Tangerine, which is basically a metamorphized version of a traditional PMO that we all are familiar with. However, at Tangerine, the Enablement PMO office goes beyond delivery and governance. Enablement office is at the table when strategy and prioritization is being discussed, along with other areas at the enterprise level, like products, channels, engineering, and other IT functional areas. Therefore, as the enablement PMO, there is a larger value proposition for the organization. I started my project management career, just to give you some background, at Scotiabank in the IT PMO office around 12 years ago, in the capacity of a project control officer, supporting PMs delivering projects or initiatives across retail lending, credit cards, mortgage business lines, etc. Then in 2015, Scotiabank partnered with McKinsey Consulting to deliver products using agile delivery. At that time, agile delivery was a newer concept, specifically for the banks. And we ventured into an experimental initiative in the mortgage business line. And that's how the Scotia's digital banking unit came about, which is called the Digital Factory. And there were around 50 Scotia bankers who were seconded from across the bank. And basically, there was an experimental initiative done for an MVP, and which resulted in a successful agile delivery methodology. And the organization scaled it, and the digital banking unit grew from 50 to almost 600 plus employees as a result of that scaling, and in a span of 2 years. So since then, the bank's processes have catered towards both waterfall and agile delivery and some form of hybrid mechanism, which has been my journey to where I am today, where I have taken my expertise in project management, delivering initiatives, and the exposure to agile delivery and governance at digital banking. And it resulted in basically two, I would say, things that I can say are my biggest career achievements being part of this organization. One is I have rolled out the first rolling forecast model for the bank, which caters to agile delivery. And secondly, the delivery framework that we all know, which banks typically use for the software delivery lifecycle. So the first agile delivery lifecycle for the organization. So that's pretty much on my career front. Slight shift on letting you know what I am beyond being a project manager professional. I'm a Canadian immigrant who came to Canada about 16 years ago with a family of 3. I have a teenage son. One of my biggest passions outside work is fitness. I'm an avid kickboxer. I'm a brown belt in Muay Thai, and I coach at a local kickboxing studio. Just to wrap it up, I'm super excited to be here today, and I'm looking forward to share what I have learned through my career journey, and also looking forward to learn from the other panelists and what everyone has to bring forward. Back to you, Ade.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much, Jyoti. That's a wealth of experience, and it's interesting. We're excited to hear from your perspective, and I think a lot of folks on the call find themselves as immigrants into Canada, and hearing from you and hearing your perspective will be very interesting. Thanks so much. Our next panelist, we'll get her to introduce herself, is Esha Firdaus. Esha.
Thanks, Ade. Hi, everyone. Super excited to be here. And, you know, as it says over there, I've been in project management professional over a decade now. Similar to Jyoti, I did start my career off as a project control officer, and I've worked my way up as a program manager now. It's been a wonderful, you know, journey along the path, lots of failures, lots of accomplishments. And, you know, being part of the financial industry, I've been very fortunate to work in a diverse portfolios of projects, from hardware, software, currency, for example, you know, doing an ABM national deployment, to cloud enablement, mobile projects, infrastructure projects. So it's been very fruitful career. I'm also very passionate about gender diversity, and just in general, diversity and inclusion. Scotiabank actually has this program called Ignite Gender Diversity, and I've been a committee member for that for over the last 5-6 years, where as a committee member, I've had the opportunity to lead some partnership programs, some events, as well as development programs, formally and also informally, mentoring colleagues and peers along the way. And I'm a lifelong learner, love meeting people, love traveling. Unfortunately, the traveling part has been kind of paused right now due to the pandemic. I'm sure everybody's feeling that, but excited for this session today to hear from my fellow panelists and just learn together. Thanks, Ade.
Okay, excellent. Well, thanks for the introduction, Esha. And it's interesting when you talk about diversity. Diversity and inclusion is core into some of our core values, is around diversity. And I'm hoping that perhaps when we have the March Pm Roundtable in celebration of the International Women's Day, perhaps we can have you as a panelist, perhaps maybe facilitate some collaboration there. That's excellent. Thanks so much, Esha. Okay, our final panelist that we're going to last but not the least, Anthony Afolabi. Anthony is very popular here at the Pm Roundtable. So Anthony, perhaps you want to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Ade. Great to come back again this year, you know, to do big things. Again, first off, welcome to the fellow panelists, Jyoti and Esha. Really nice to hear your stories, really impressive. And thanks to all the consultants for always creating this platform. It's unbelievable for me. Very happy to see about 33 people, 34 and still counting join in. We share a lot of great nuggets on this platform. Personally, just using as a segue to who I am, I like to give back. I love the presentation, Ade, we started with creating leaders for tomorrow. Then we've talked about gender, and we've talked about, you know, women and all this stuff. Like, so many things going on that we're trying to really impact in different facets of life, and this really just gets my blood boiling. I currently live in England now, but I was not too far from Canada. I lived in Canada for 9 years myself, and still very much connected to that country. Again, as an immigrant, as Jyoti said as well, I lived in Canada, you know, downtown, worked in 3 of the banks before, but my background came in from business management, business analysis, and so I moved into kind of data management, data governance, where I currently work with Boston Consulting Group, kind of leading the Data Governance Center of Excellence there. And throughout my career so far, I've always been one who's always been motivated about how you and I can both be in all of these big towers, Bay Street, you know, Manhattan, wherever you want to be. You know, I've always been someone who believes there's nothing you can't do if you set your mind to it. Most people on this call live in a very, 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 very rich country of Canada with opportunities there. And this today, I'm looking forward to exploring how your goals can match up with how you can achieve your best in a land such as Canada and beyond. You know, such a great topic. I think it's timely. I think it's a great time. There's some facts as well that are prepared for us on this call. Hoping for a very, very interactive chat as we normally do. Let's get into it. Let's set ourselves these goals. Let's move forward with it and see what we can achieve together in 2022. So looking forward to chatting to you today. Thank you.
Super. Thanks so much, Anthony. We're excited. We're excited. We've heard from the panelists. We're excited to hear from them. We're excited to get into the conversation. Let's dive right into it. The conversation is going to be around we have a few questions. We have a list of questions that we've identified that we want the panelists to address, but we also do want to hear from the audience. So a few housekeeping. If you're not speaking, please put your mic on mute. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. We'll make sure to address those questions. We have a ton of questions to go through, and it's exciting. And what's even more important, we want to see the audience. We want to see the community. So at this moment, I'm going to exit the presentation mode. So let's see who's on the call. Let's see everybody. Let's get comfortable with the community. I can see so many familiar faces on the call, or familiar names on the call right now, and we're excited to have you on. So we're gonna get started. My first question is to you, Esha. Esha, the question is, what's your number one tip for goal setting or goal achievement? What sort of tips do you have when it comes to goal setting?
I think for me, it would be following the SMART methodology, which is, you have to be specific. It has to be something that's measurable. A stands for something that's aligned or aspirational. And then R is, how relevant is it to what you want to get your path to? And then the T is obviously for time bound. It has to have a time frame or some sort of milestone that you want to achieve. And the way typically I would go towards for the goals is I usually break it down between hard skills and soft skills. Hard skills could be if there is a tool out there, learning how to use it. So for agile methodology, I heard someone mention earlier, it could be being able to use, how do I know how to use Jira or Confluence or Azure DevOps? And then on the soft skills part is the human aspect of it, how we communicate, the emotional intelligence, being with the team, influencing the team, pursuing the team, and so on and so forth.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Aisha. That's amazing. And when you think about hard skills, soft skills, it's interesting. Most people focus on the hard skills. The soft skills, emotional intelligence. I think one of the most successful leaders, when you see in all areas of career, they're often strong in their soft skills. Your emotional intelligence, how do you get people motivated? How do you get people to get things, be aligned with those goals? Thanks for sharing. We're gonna go next to you, Jyoti. Jyoti, perhaps if you wanna share additional anything outside of what Esha just shared in terms of goal settings, some of the tips you need to put in place when it comes to setting up your goals.
Yes, thank you, Ari. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. So I think what Esha has said is right on point. For your goals, it's very important that they are smart. They found the foundation of goal setting is for them to be smart. However, one thing that has worked for me over and above that part is what I call the aggregation of marginal gains. What that really means is something I translate my goal into a daily habit or smaller objectives, which helps me enforce or implement the goal in a smart way. What does that really mean? My goal may be time bound, where I'm looking to achieve something, maybe let's say, typically from a career perspective, we do annual goals. So we have a 12-month time span. I set up something like smaller objectives, which could be 1 month, 2 months, or 3 months. I break them down into smaller objectives, which gives me an opportunity to be able to practice the goals being smart. Like I'm measuring it, I have a milestone, I go for realignment to make sure I'm still on track, and translate that into some form of a daily habit as well on a day-to-day basis, so that I'm constantly reminded that where I'm spending my time is actually aligned to my end objective or my end goal, instead of me realizing it too late in the game that I'm off track and that's no longer achievable. That's where I see the benefit of the aggregation of marginal gains, translating your longer goals into smaller objectives, and eventually into a daily habit.
Interesting. I think, for me, and I want folks to listen, it's those habits that translate those goals into the results you're looking for. Because often we can come up with a list of goals and want to achieve them. Now, in order to achieve those goals, there's certain things that needs to change in your habits. Maybe I have to wake up at 7 in the morning versus wake up 6 in the morning versus waking up 8 or 9 in the morning. Maybe I need to have a quiet time to get certain things done. So those habits translate into the results you're looking for. I'll get Anthony to weigh in on this. Perhaps Anthony, I have another question. Perhaps maybe before, if you're itching to get on this one, I'll let you get on before, because there's a ton of questions. I'll let you weigh in, and then we'll move on to the next question.
Right, so I think, Jyoti and Esha really nailed it, to be honest, and even you, Ade. But I wanted to kind of take it further and just stop at the last point, which is the habits. We live in a world today where really and truly, if you think, I call it the CEO mentality. I think Jyoti started with saying that the goal has to be relevant. Esha also buttressed that part. You have to know what it takes for that goal as well. Sometimes, and I think this is one thing that we all are guilty of, we make it so lofty. A goal doesn't need to be lofty, it just needs to be achievable. Okay, it just needs to be achievable. How can I execute on this? Again, I challenge anyone on the call today to say, how many times have we been on a project that we've committed so much to, and in what we call the learning outcomes, or in hindsight, we said to ourselves, maybe we kind of bit that too much there. And then compared to the other time when you pushed back and you said, this goal seems okay for me. And then at the end of the year, which we'll get to, we can say, I committed to these 4 things, and I can tell you that I achieved them. Okay, so example could be, I just finished my executive MBA, and, the pandemic pushed me a little bit more to say, again, I responded to, so your goal has to respond to what's going on right now. And I think that's my first point. Right now, I just finished reading 4.5 million jobs are orphaned in America this last quarter or last month. There's 1.5 million jobs in England now not taken, just talking jobs now, and Canada is going through. There's something called the Great Resignation right now. There's so many shifts happening right now. How's your goal responding to the current situation? So beyond the fact that you're just thinking about goal, are you responding to what's going on right now? Scrum Master, whatever you want to be right now, it's a great time to think about, how do I respond to what's happening? Because the environment ultimately also determines how far your goal will reach. Okay, so that's one thing that I want us to think about as we get off this call. What can I leverage as I do my goal setting? Do I have a great manager or a director who's basically invested in me, for instance, when I do my goal on work day or work? Can I use the opportunity now to move on to the next step? Or do I have one more year for the next level I see myself, right? So again, I'll use, as far as your eyes can see, something that's sensible, but also think around you right now. How can I leverage what's happening in today's world? I'm a new immigrant, or Ole is talking about goal setting. I'm connecting with Jyoti, Esha, Ade, many people on the call who can help me with goals. There's so much we can use, what I'm saying, that can be instrumental in the goal setting today. That's just really, really important. Again, don't make it too lofty, like you heard. Don't make it relevant, but most important, let it be in alignment to what is going on right now around you. I think that's where I want to leave that.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Perfect. Well, there's a lot to unpack. I'm taking notes. Thanks so much, Anthony. I do have some tips that I employ myself. Some of the things that I do when it comes to goal setting is I write them down. I write down my goals. I review them regularly. It could be daily. Some of those strategies help you stay focused. And like the panelists said, to gain momentum, I think the smaller goals, focusing on those smaller goals helps you gain momentum. And, in some cases, if you can celebrate those wins, those small wins, is also very good for your momentum. So we'll move on to the next question. Next question, I'm going to start with you first, Jyoti. in what career areas should someone set goals, and how many goals should a person have at a time?
I believe that I'll take on what Esha had mentioned earlier. I'll continue on that and elaborate and try to connect with it because I think it's very relevant. We work on building or learning ourselves so that our capability or probability of achieving the goal that we have set for ourselves goes up. And how do we do that? I think one thing that has worked for me is looking at opportunities to continuously learn and train that will align to achieve that goal for me. Second one is networking. I've realized that I may not have all the skills or the approach or strategies to get to that goal. So how do I make up that? Take support from the people who are either subject matter experts in the area, have the right relationships and contacts. So build a support group within the organization and outside from whom you can learn from, who can share their experiences. One of the ways of doing it is if you want specific coaching, have a mentor early on in life. One of the key things one of my first mentors shared with me is that which resonated with me really well and made me realize that I wish I had a mentor earlier in life. It could have helped me expedite the journey that how long it took me to get where I wanted to get. And second, the mentor said that I mentor and give back today, but even though I'm a mentor, I have a mentor myself. So basically what it means that you can mentor someone and still be a mentee at the same time, because I think all of us need help and support. And that was the takeaway for me. So I think having a mentor and having that support group through networking, building those relationships so that you get to learn from others' experiences, which will help you basically expedite. So, and last but not the least, which is all tied to both of this, is ongoing feedback. So these are the things where you should have some goals, which will support you that for me to get to my goal, what learning opportunities I need to have, who I can leverage to get there, and ongoing constant feedback so that I know that I'm aligned with the point that Anthony made, that my goal is aligned with the priorities of the people around me, the organization I'm in. How do you solicit that information other than being aware yourself through feedback? And that ensures that your alignment of the goal through that journey exists. Touching on the second point, how many goals one person should have, I think that depends on the associated effort it takes. As I mentioned earlier, when you translate your goal into smaller objectives, the realistic achievability of those smaller objectives drives the number, because for me, that number has been somewhere between the 3 or 4 range. But again, it can be higher or lower depending on the achievability, and something that is not distracting. I think that's what once we need to be careful about. So any number about 4, in my experience, that has worked for me, seems like a distraction for me, and decreases the probability of me achieving the goals. So I try to stick between that number, and I may have 1 or more above it depending upon the time frame it takes me and the effort around the goals that I have for that specific time frame.
Oh, excellent. Well, lots to unpack, folks. I just want to say that you're hearing from the panelists. They're giving us so much nuggets. I'm taking notes. Networking is an area that I need to improve upon. I've been told by our digital marketing people that you can't be behind the scenes. You need to show up. Networking is an area I need to improve upon. But I see Anthony has his hands up. I'm sure Anthony has something he wants to share. So perhaps Anthony, you want to go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jyoti just kind of riled me up in a second, very positively. I thought I wanted to talk about, when she said she was her own mentor. And, I was just going to challenge you, Jyoti, to say there's a reason why you're not just taking a tangerine and saying, I've got a job now, so I shouldn't, do anything further. I think one of the things I want to kind of mention is that you got to connect your goals to your purpose. That means you have to have a purpose in the beginning. And there's a book that I always recommend for people, which is Simon Sinek. Start with the why. Why do I have a goal in the first place? It's always about the why in everything. Keep it simple, keep it practical. One of the things that I had a goal a very long time ago that I knew, again, speaking from from a background / race standpoint, that I needed to have so much more to be reckoned with in a boardroom. So the names that of brands that I work for, my CVs have to work for me, or my resume has to work for me at an interview for the job that people will normally look at me for, right? Now, I wanted to leave another nugget very quickly. They say empty barrels make the loudest noise. Do you know why they say that? Because when there's nothing in the barrel, it'll move anyhow you want. Your goal is the substance in that barrel, right? When you keep doing that, then what I'm saying is, I'm not going to be working at Boston Consulting Group, BCG, MBB company, McKinsey, Bain, and BCG, the only number one tier strategy company, and I don't have a goal to make myself relevant or network. I don't have an MBA, or my business card does not have those BNP, MBA, and all those things on it. Then I'm really, at some point, I think I'm lying to myself, So, Jyoti, what you mentioned about yourself, I think that's what I want to kind of talk about that too. You have a lot to play in that goal setting, and that's it. And it's not because we're trying to put pressure on yourself. We put pressure on ourselves anyway. But at the same time, we're going to talk about the number of goals here. We're going to talk about how to achieve it, the networking. But most importantly, it starts with you. Why do I want to go? Why do I need a goal? Why can't I just say anything that happens to me by November is fine? So when you're okay with that purpose and you connect that goal together, I think is the beginning of when you start to make all the other things we're talking about now. The networking, and while you're on a call on a Saturday for an hour and a half again, is all part of how you're driving yourself to really start the year properly. Thanks.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much, Anthony. I know it's really important to note that goal setting is amazing. It's great to goal set, but every goal starts with a why. Why am I here? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Why do I want to? Why do I have that fitness goal? Why do I have that financial goal? What is it that I'm looking to achieve, accomplish? It's got to be a bigger goal. And I always say, and I've said it before on a podcast that I was part of, I said, your why has to be bigger than your fears. Your why has to be bigger than the procrastination, those distractions, those obstacles. The why has to be so big that those obstacles come and you still pull through and you go through those turbulence, and you still know there's a bigger purpose, that there's a destination that I want to get to. I'm going to stay with the question. We're going to hear from you, Esha. Esha, I know you talked about, the question is, what areas should someone set goals and how many goals? I know you talked about career goals, soft skills, hard skills. Can you elaborate, I know you talked about Jira, maybe you want to learn Jira, you want to learn Confluence, because today's world, the delivery framework is very agile focused. But you also talked about DevOps. You also talked about things like Smartsheet when we're speaking. Can you share why people should think about those tools in today's market?
Sure. I think it goes back to what Anthony said earlier. There is a linear way of looking. I'm in this company, I'm in this role, and I'm working here. And then there's that other lens of things where what's happening around me, regardless of the industry, whether it's project management, I don't know, real estate, like what's happening, what are people feeling, being relevant, being current, seeing the trend. So I think having that bigger picture, or at least being aware of it, you don't need to be a subject matter expert in it, but have the knowledge enough to know that where are things shifting, how can I get there? So going back to the question, Ade, from the types of goals and all that stuff, I would say from a hard scale perspective, for me, it's like Jyoti said, we were both working for the bank at the same time when the Agile got implemented in the bank. It was something new. It's a new way of doing things. Now we have shifted to there are some teams that runs completely Agile. Some are more of a hybrid environment. Some are waterfall based on, the line of business it's in. So strictly from a banking perspective, I'm saying, okay, I have to be aware for me to successfully be a successful person and successfully deliver in my role. I need to know these hard skills, or at least have enough knowledge so I can have a intellectual conversation when I am going into those meetings with the people. And it goes back to Anthony. I love the fact that you brought up Simon Sinek's why. I was fortunate enough to see him live in one of the seminars, and it goes again to why. It's like, why are we doing this? And then once you figure out the why, which is the purpose, then it's okay, so what do I need to do to get there? And then the ball starts rolling. Okay, now I know what to do. How am I going to get there? What do I have to do get there? And then it could be individual level from your goal perspective, or it could be collectively as a team. Like as a team, how do we get there? How do we come across those thresholds? So those aspects, I guess, was where the soft skill comes in. So for me, it's, understanding from the industry that I'm in, where things are going, what are the tools that my colleagues or people in the industry are using, so I should be aware of. And then the second part is, that's just me on my own, the emotional side of things. Okay, being in a pandemic, we're in a remote environment. How do we connect to the team? How do we motivate the team? What works? What doesn't work? If someone's not delivering something, why is that? And then having those conversation, those leadership skills. And one of my mentors shared something, and I know sometimes depending on the culture of the company, people are afraid to go in front of leadership or getting their advice. To me, he broke it down to say, leaders are there to help you out, to help remove the roadblocks, to move things along. And just touching quickly, going back to the whole mentor and mentoring thing, it's such a fruitful experience for me. I've been both, and I still am a mentee myself, and I'm a mentor. But even on those mentorship, even though I'm mentoring someone, I always learn something new. It's a two-way learning experience I've experienced in my career.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for the share, Esha. Again, there's a lot to unpack. I think one thing that is sticking with everyone is that you need to have a purpose. Start with why. And I think the why is really interesting, because we can talk about this all day, because your why, this helps you, shapes your way of being, your values, your principles, and the way you carry yourself. The bigger picture, because things you come across your why guides your decision making, because whether or not to take on a project, because I feel like this project aligns with my bigger purpose, why I'll take on that project. So I think this is amazing, and this is a different PM roundtable, because I'm not just listening to the panelists. I also want to share my own personal strategies when it comes to goal settings. The areas that I try to set goals, business goals, I look at career goals, I look at financial goals. You can talk about financials. We need money. I talk about family goals, health goals, maybe fitness goals. I also look at personal goals, spiritual goals, fun experience goals. I want to take a vacation. Maybe I need 2 vacations this year. It's really good. It's good for my mental health. Just want to share that. We're going to move on to the next question. I guess question I'm going to go to you, Jyoti, is do you recommend, actually, let me put some context to this. There are 2 schools of thoughts. There are folks that believe in, don't dream too big, just set small goals. And there are folks that are like, dream big, if you fail, you land on the crowd, whatever, how it goes, Kanye West had a song. So do you recommend setting smaller goals or risking failure by setting higher ones? So I'll go to you, start with you first, Jyoti.
Well, I'll start by saying, don't be afraid to set a goal that seems like a reach. I think at the end of the day, what it comes down to is what I referred to earlier. If you believe that the goal is something that you're not ready for, that is what the plan is for. You translate that into smaller objectives. You may not have the skill set, you may not have the support from the right people, but as long as you set a plan to close those areas where you recognize you don't have that skill set or support today, How do you acquire that? I'll share an example with you. I'm a project management professional. I do not have a financial background. I shared with you earlier on that I set up the first rolling forecast model for the bank. And financial is something I've not had any educational experience. How did that came about being my goal? Because if I see as a layman person, at some point, to be honest, I did not have that in my mind at all. It is something I came across just because the circumstances, the situation around me required to solve for a very key gap in the organization. And I took on that opportunity. Because I did not have financial background, I'd never anticipated I'll end up with that goal. However, I did have ideas in my mind on how I can do that because I understood the space, like who the influencers are, who gives what information. So even though I'm not the expert, I had the confidence that I could collate the information and come up with something that would make sense. So that is why I ended up with a financial goal for myself. And even though I did not have an expertise, I broke it down into smaller objectives, as I referred earlier. So I had set myself an objective that within a span of 4 weeks, I will make sure that I know. At that point, I was part of Scotia digital banking, and all this forecasting piece, the relationship management was a Canadian banking finance team. So the smaller first goal for me was I will set up at least 4 contacts who are part of the forecasting process in Canadian banking. My second goal was to understand by soliciting information from those 4 people and come up with an end-to-end flow. Who is the decision maker through that flow? Who is asking for this information? Where do they solicit from? Who puts it together? Who makes the decision? Who is the challenger? That whole end-to-end flow. And as I broke this down into smaller goals, at the end of the day, I was able to connect the dots with the thought process I had in mind and come up with a rolling forecast model, which eventually ended up being the basis of how Canadian banking finance does forecasting for agile teams. Because we knew that in traditional delivery or waterfall delivery, once you set up a financial budget for or forecast for an initiative, there is no changing. But in the rolling forecast model, you have an opportunity on an ongoing basis. So that different change or shift of the mindset was driven by that, even though I did not have a financial background. So if I look back at that, at one point, that was something totally unachievable. That was not my subject matter expertise. So what I'm trying to say is that if circumstances sometimes prompt you for a need, as long as you think it through, even though it may seem as far reaching, as long you should have smaller objectives and a plan to get there. It is feasible. So don't be afraid to set up goals which seem far reaching.
Okay, all right. Well, thanks so much, Jyoti. That's very, that's on point. And I think obviously for folks to know, it gets a little technical, rolling forecast. I'm not sure everybody understand what that means. I'm gonna go to Anthony. Thanks, Jyoti. So Anthony, perhaps if you want to share, we talked about the 2 schools of thought around setting smaller goals or risking failure by setting higher ones. If you can touch on that, and also if you can talk about, well, moving on to the next question as well, because in the interest of time, I'd like the audience to get the benefit of all the questions that we have in here. In addition to that, there's another question I have here. What should someone do if they don't meet their goal in the desired time frame? So, talk about, again, this is kind of like a subset of the first one, which is should I set big goals or should I set small goals, and what do I do if I don't meet those goals in the desired time frame?
Good. I'll start with the last one first. Yeah. First things first is, nothing is that serious. That's one thing I've learned. The last 2 years, look at what's happened to all of us. We didn't know we could stay at home and work remotely. We didn't know that governments can provide funds for people to be paid when businesses go down. The last 2 years have shown us that there's really nothing that you can't, rearrange, restructure. So in as much as I say that, it's about the balancing act as well. We're not saying don't be too hard on yourself or don't make your goals lofty. At the same time, we're saying don't relent. So you got to learn to kind of balance that. What I'm trying to say at the end of the day to the first question is, so peradventure you're short of that goal. What then happens? You have to be able to still be as strong as we are speaking today to say, how can I reassess it, right? So you can always reassess the goal. That's what you do. You reassess and say, learning outcomes, hindsight being 2020, areas. I can give you a practical example. Remember some interviews that you've gonna love that job so much, but you didn't get it. How many times are you been better in the next interview just because you failed on the first one? Because you now know what you've done differently, or what you could be done differently, could have done differently. So at the back of our minds, and I say at the back of your mind, always know that it's never the end of the world. In fact, that helps you achieve the goal that was even you thought that you can't achieve the next time. Because what if it's the next tranche, the next quarter, that's when you're actually going to go beyond those two goals and do much more. So up here is always the most important thing you protect, right? Your mindset, right? So then what? You didn't meet it. Does that mean you're not going to meet the goals overall? Does that mean you're going to meet your goals at the end of the year after all? You know, we do things, you know, again, many of you who are managers like me, we do quarterly check-in and we do end of year, mid-year, all of those things. At the end of the day, sometimes you see what your trend is looking like and you're able to say for a fact, yeah, am I still able to catch up and achieve the overarching and the overall goal at the end of the year? So that's my answer. You can reassess. It's not the end of the world. And what do? Is you sit down, be honest with yourself and say, okay, cool. Can I, you know, can I massage my goal a little bit? You know, I'm using a very business-like word here, massaging, reassessing or level setting or whatever, or realigning. So that's the one. Back to kind of my 2 cents to the previous one before the latest question around kind of, you know, how high, how low, you know, do you set your goal? What do you have to lose? That's the first question. What do you have to lose? You know, for me, I always say, if I can look back and say that I've done better than I did yesterday, that's really what the measurement is, first off. The second aspect is, let's keep it simple. Sometimes I ask myself, what's my goal this year? I want to start to exhibit the next level competencies. Something as simple as that. So if you're in a room with decision makers, for me, I did it at TD Bank with SVPs. I wondered how SVPs carry themselves and how they make decisions. What are the things they look at to make decisions? I used to have this guy, I worked with him, he was SVP of a division in TD. He had this iPad in his hand and he asked the most intelligent question in the room when it comes to the decision. Obviously, his role allows him to do that. So in my role, I started to embed those things in as well. My goal is, because I know, again, the purpose is to increase my level and go past me management, for instance. So there's an overarching theme that drives everything we do. So then I said to myself, for me to be able to do this, I must be able to speak like someone who really should be in that role. And then for me to do that, for instance, obviously, I had to know how to collect all and gather all the requirements and information around it. So either you're a PM, a Scrum Master, a business analyst, for instance, what does it mean to be a lead business analyst? Because that was my goal by December. Lead is leading, correct? So rather than being someone who is not good at forecasting jobs that are trickling down, for instance, then start to do those things, start to look at ways to do them. Because you cannot be a lead business analyst if you are still going on Jira tickets, for instance, and just picking up Jira tickets and doing it. I'm done at 5 o'clock. Leads don't do that, for instance, right? So your desire, your mindset, for instance, determines really and truly how you set it. I think Jyoti and Esha mentioned that. But in as much as that, for instance, you can have a mixture of both. One that I know is not as challenging, and one that I know really will challenge me, right? And then you find your balance. That's how I've worked it out in the past. One that really, really challenges me, one that perhaps I know I can challenge. Because you know what, yeah, the one person that we don't lie to, apart from a lawyer and a doctor, is ourselves. We know, right? You know. Should I have asked the question before that Zoom call ended? You know, or challenge myself. At work, most things you hear all the time, there's no such thing as a stupid question. Don't you hear it all the time? So why did you talk more in that meeting? Why did you create that footprint that you wanted as a goal that year, for instance? So again, back to it, it's about the balance. What can I really know I can achieve? So I had a friend who told me, look, my goal is to increase my network on LinkedIn by 100 people this year, right? So if you do 130, that's the challenging part of it, but both of them have a common denominator. They're both goals. One was easily achievable, one was challenging, and you find the balance. That's how I will look at that question.
Okay, excellent. Well, well, I would say balance is key in terms of any walks of life. When you think about things that you're trying to achieve, balance is key. Even when you have so many things you're trying to achieve and you're overwhelming yourself, and again, we need to find balance. So if you're setting small goals and they're very easy, sometimes challenge yourself a little bit, and finding balance is extremely important in every area, even in terms of the sort of projects you take on at work, the sort of projects, personal projects you take on. Finding balance is extremely important, and I'm going to speak to that later. I'll get you to weigh in, Esha. We had two questions. Perhaps if you have any comments around those two questions, around whether setting high goals, smaller goals, or perhaps the second part, we talks about what should someone do if they don't meet their goals in their desired time frame.
Okay, so I think I agree with so far what both Jyoti and Anthony has said. And if you don't meet a certain goal, and similar to both of them, I like to break them down. There is the overarching high level goal that's radical, that's going to get me out of my comfort zone. And that's when the learning and the growth happens. And then there are those that are very obtainable. It's like, okay, if I follow along this path, I can achieve that goal. So I definitely like to chunk it down. However, we're all guilty. Life happens, work happens, things come up, and you don't end up getting a goal. So what? You pivot. You have to be kind to yourself, and you pivot and you measure accordingly. It could, and I'm also someone that do a health check or a pulse check on my goals pretty often, but from a career perspective, it would be either on a monthly or a quarterly basis, on just to see where things are going. So if I don't meet a goal, what I try to do is usually just sit back. If it's a personal goal, like you mentioned, Adi, whether it's income, financial, how much I'm going to make, health wise, do I want to change my diet to more of a healthy diet? Do I want to work out more? And if on a personal level, if things don't work out, I actually take a step back and ask myself, well, I know this was done a few months ago or whatever. At that point, this is something I thought I wanted. Do I really want it? Am I still interested? Does it bring me joy? Does it bring me the fulfillment that I want? And if the answer is you know what, it doesn't really align, I'm not really into it, maybe it's time to get rid of the goal and recycle it and get somewhere. Now, on the professional side of things, obviously there's, if you're a full-time employee in an organization, typically there's some goals that are mandated to you that you have to get done. In other settings, you may, with working with your manager or your leadership team, you may have a certain amount of goals. And if you have not met that, then I would just understand, okay, why am I not able to accomplish it? And then once I figure out why I'm not able to accomplish it, is it too many things on my plate so that I don't have time put aside to put towards learning and development? Or is it, what, I need help from someone? So that's when I would go to my manager to say that, hey, I know you wanted me to do, I don't know, A, B, C, D this year between the first half of the year. Can't do that. It's not happening because I have all of this in my plate. I need to prioritize things, need your help. And that's the dialogue you would have at a work level, or maybe with your colleagues if you're not comfortable talking to your management, but truly understanding why am I not able to achieve it? Because I think from the career perspective, it's a bit more rigid. So you have to kind of, there's a saying called different strokes for different folks. So you have to manage it in a different way. Whereas personal one, you have autonomy on it. You're the driver's seat, and you can pivot it any way you want based on, okay, where we were a year ago versus the people that we are today. We are a different person. There's been experiences, learning, and growth that has come along the way, right? So I guess for me, Ade, it's a whole slew of things that I look at depending on what it is. Career, it's a bit more binary where you can work towards it. Personal, I really take a step back to look at my fulfillment and, is it going where I want to see myself in the next 5 years? Is it helping me become the person that I want to be?
Excellent. Lots to unpack. I think I'm just going to take away a few things. You have to be able to pivot and measure your goals. I think, the health check, we talk about health status reporting, project management. You're doing that for your project. Can you do the same for your own personal goals? And I think, asking yourself questions, I think, why am I not? I think, again, that's something I practice a lot. Because often we associate not accomplishing a goal, or when things are not going well, we associate that to external parties. When we start asking ourselves, look inside, why? And ask yourself questions. Okay, what do I need to do? If you start asking, those answers show up. Thanks so much. And like I said, I like to share my thoughts around things that I do, especially when it comes to if you're not meeting your goals within the desired time frame. For me, I reflect. I'll reflect on my goals and try to see. Often, it's interesting when you have so much you're trying to achieve. Often we focus on the negative. You have a whole day, you've accomplished 10 items, and you have just one at the end of the day that didn't go well. And that's the focus. That becomes the focal point. So often it's really important to reflect on how far you've come and things that are going well. And that helps you build momentum. Acknowledge those things, appreciate the things that you've done, celebrate those small wins, and refocus, realign yourself with those goals. It's really important to just acknowledge, reflect on the things that you've achieved, because again, this often happens so many times. We focus on those things that are not working, whereas we've been able to accomplish so much. So we're going to move on. Thanks so much.
I just want to interject very quickly again for the workers on the call. I know the season for PDG, professional development, goals right now, and just focused on what Esha mentioned about like the balance between kind of what the world of business works like and personal. I've learned also the two things that businesses look like at, which is impact and value. And unfortunately, impact is what we measure on, really, not value. Value is kind of like, corporate responsibility. So when you're setting your goals this year, just make sure it's most impactful and a balance between valuable. Valuable is at the end of the goal. I'll give you an example. When I was a junior consultant, even a senior consultant, end of the year is when we do things like regular reading and compliance reading. But the impact is on my billability. How many times does a client ask you back to bill? So when you're setting those goals, even now you can translate that into your personal life. Which one is the most impactful? But then the value is kind of like, second. But in the world of place, please make sure that as for all of us in the call, the ones we're choosing is the impact. So you can, again, justify it at the end of the year. Thanks.
Okay. Well, hey, Anthony, I'll leave the show. We'll let you run the show. Hey, folks, Anthony is one of our superstars here. He's always happy to share. We have a lot to unpack. You can see the panelists are itching to share. They're itching to give more. We're going to move on, though. We'll move on to the next question, which is very interesting. And next question is around procrastination. Who doesn't procrastinate? So my question to you, I'm going to start with you first, Jyoti. Do you have any tips for anyone on how to overcome procrastination so that they can get started with achieving those goals? Because again, this is a goal setting period, just like Anthony said. January 1st, we have this laundry list of goals, but then by March, by April, we start knowing the true self and the true folks that want to really get into what they're planning to achieve. So what tips do you have for to overcome procrastination? Starting with you first, Jyoti.
Thank you, Eddie. Procrastination, as you truly said, all of us do that. And I know I had done that for the longest time. And I recognize that the first step for me to take any action was to understand the triggers. That why was I procrastinating? What triggers me to defer something? And I came to know that there are certain things that make me uncomfortable. My discomfort is one of them, complexity. For example, for me personally, public speaking was one of the areas which I was always very, very uncomfortable with. And I recognize anything that required me to do that is something that, of the tasks that I had to get done, that is where I'll spend time in the end. I'll defer it. I'll keep deferring it. Even having to plan for it is something I used to procrastinate on. That's how, I guess it was a mental barrier that I had for myself, which led to that procrastination. So understanding your triggers, and sometimes these are some of the things commonly which lead to procrastination. It could be other factors, which has really helped me in terms of overcoming that is one thing that you touched on, Ari, is writing it down. For me, I'm visual. I'm a very visual person. It helps me if something is visual. So I try to specific activities which I know have my trigger points related to, let's say, public speaking. I put it either in my calendar as an activity where I know that, let's say, beginning of the day, I block my calendar for an hour, and whether I want to or not, in spite of the priorities, that 1 hour is slotted out that I spend towards that activity. I plan that out and I visualize it for myself so that that procrastination opportunity is gone, and there is a counter visual, you can say a prop, which gives me accountability to stay on track or overcome that procrastination. So for me, visualization is one thing which works for me on a day-to-day basis. Some of the other ideas which have worked for me is you might be aware of having your vision board where you list down your goals. So from a goals perspective, listing down and having it written down in front of you. And it could be like a quote that encourages you. If you have fear of public speaking, you have that quote in front of you in your visual board, read through that, and it helps you overcome that fear or procrastination. And second one that has worked for me in the ongoing basis is accountability, having somebody other than yourself hold you accountable to that. It could be your mentor, it could be somebody in your network with whom you share what you're intending to do or why, and they basically could be your sounding board. And as and when you interact with them, it's a trigger for you because you have in your plan identified them to hold you accountable. So mentor is a perfect person with whom I typically do that, and they do help me. I share with them what I'm planning for, and in our touch points, they will ask me, "Oh, where are you with that?" So I know if I'm meeting my mentor in 2 weeks, that I will get asked that thing. So I better get that part done and moving, which I had committed to or shared with my mentor the last time we met. That's another example.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks so much. Thanks so much, Jyoti. I think that's really, it's again a lot to unpack. Visualizing your goals does help a lot. Having those quotes that remind you, because often we need reminders because self-doubt is real. You're motivated today and then you don't feel the same the next day and you're wondering why. So you need those little things that remind you that, hey, you know what, this is what you set out to do. This is in line with my purpose. This is why I'm here. And I think like Jyoti said, having that accountability partner, there's something powerful with sharing with somebody else other than yourself because it keeps you accountable, especially if you actually have monthly touch points or weekly touch points, because you remember, you have to be accountable, makes you recommit yourself to those goals. So I'll go to Esha now and then we'll go to Anthony. Esha, you want to share anything around tips for overcoming procrastination?
Sure. I think, Jyoti, you covered most of it, and that's something I also do personally in my life as well. When you share it with someone, I don't know, something it works in your psychology where you're like, okay, now that that person knows that, let's just talk about, for example, a certification. I want to get certified or I want to do something in 6 months. And it's like you're almost feeling like that the accountability really kicks in when you share because you're like, oh crap, 6 months has passed by. I have not done anything. Now, what are they going to think about me? So that kind of creates that unconscious motivation for you to do. But for me, I think, we're all guilty of procrastinating. Going back to Anthony's key theme of impact. So when I procrastinate on something, I take a step back and understand the impact. Like, if I don't get to it right now, what is the impact of it? If it is like a significant impact, and like Jyoti mentioned, it's probably something that you're not comfortable with, or maybe you just simply don't like doing it. I know in the past we have shared that, like, sometimes there are days I don't feel like doing meeting minutes. So I'll just kind of defer it based on, like, what's urgent. I'll do it, tackle it the next day. It doesn't have to be on my list for to-do list for today. So I think it's that understanding that impact of procrastination, whether it's professionally or personally. The other thing is, I like doing the 5-second rule, just kind of taking a deep breath in and out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's like, all right, just kind of be my own cheerleader, pump myself up. I'm like, okay, let's go get it done. Because, the longer I procrastinate, I am delaying whatever I have to do. So I'll have to face it sooner or later. Why don't I just like power through and just get it over with? Then there's no longer stress of like, oh, I've missed this deadline, or I've done this. I'll have to face it afterwards anyway. So I'll just get it off the list right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Aisha. Yeah, and the 5-second rules is real. Mel, it's a book as well by Mel Robbins. The 5-second rule, it's a rule that when you have a thought and you think about doing something, if you don't take action, or maybe you're sleeping and you wake up in the morning and you count 5 seconds instead of going back to bed, within that 5 seconds, if you take action, you're able to overcome procrastination. So there's a lot to unpack. Thanks for sharing, Esha. I know Esha and I, we do find, get to connect or meet at some conference. We bump into each other at different conference. I think the last time I saw you was at Tony Robbins, right? Yeah,
yes.
Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. That's awesome. Okay, we're gonna go next to Anthony. Anthony, perhaps if you want to help us unpack this procrastination thing, and maybe we go to the next question as well. Again, in the interest of time, trying to move things quickly. Next question, obviously procrastination, there's a lot to unpack there. No, Anthony, we're going to wait for you to share. But the next question also talks about what should someone do if others around them aren't supportive of their goals? This one is deep. When you have people around you, they're not supportive of your goals, So, we can talk about procrastination, and let's talk about the other part as well.
I was just going to tell everybody, if you haven't learned anything for the last 41 hours, stop whatever you're doing. These 5 and 6 questions are very important. Very, very, very important. I think that Adi was talking about it. There's something called self-doubt. It's very, very, very important. I think that one of the things I thought about as we're talking, I Googled procrastination again, and just so you know, again, is the action of delaying or postponing something. But similar words that came with it was delaying tactics, stalling, temporizing, hesitation. We all guilty of it, as she said, we all are. And so one of the ways I've overcome this in the past was even at university, something called a white paper syndrome, that blank page of word, just how do I start? Okay. And then in most cases, I just now remember what Nike said back in the day on Nike, just do it. I've had many people in the past, like business analysts, new job, they've just asked me to write requirements. And oftentimes we want to write, when, then, shall, and when a system does not do this, and then shall. And I said to, I think him or her, why don't you just write the requirements you think this thing needs? System needs to gather data from this repository or something. And then there was the meeting, and everybody, oh, good. And they started to add a little bit more. And in fact, she used the energy for the people to make that piece of work happen. But the most important thing is you started with something, right? Procrastination, one of the best ways is just do it. I love some of the nuggets that Jyoti and Esha, started. Accountability was one of them. The other part with Esha, again, I wrote down, was really looking about the impact. I think that's also a very good one. For me, pressure is what I used in the past, or still to this day. I got to do it. So just do it really is a pressure somewhat. I got to get it done, right? There is an agenda item in my name on it on the Thursday. You've got to get it done. right? There is a team meeting minutes that I didn't write down that we're going to talk about, because here at TD Scotiabank, what we do is we talk about what we talked about last meeting as an action item. And then, so if Asher didn't want to write it on Wednesday, the 5-second rule means so Tuesday, by Wednesday, I have to send it by email, because Thursday is the first thing we discuss about. So pressure was one of those things that I've used in the past. I have to get it done, right? I'm in a high impact team. I'm a senior manager somewhere, I'm a director. I have to get it done. That's one of the things, but basically hearing from me today that procrastination happens to everybody. There's no remote control about it. We're just talking about ways, some guardrails, some ways to kind of navigate around it, but it happens to everybody. You've heard about accountability, think about the larger picture of the impact. For me, the pressure. Some days I leave things I don't do it early enough, but towards that time, I realize, and then that pushes me to get things done. So that's my take on that. The second part about when people around you aren't seeing supporting your goals is the biggest thing. I tell you, the people I reported to have been very instrumental in where I've been in my life to this day, at work, especially at work. Now I'm talking professionally now. And of course, we talk about support system. One of the things that I'd say is change the environment all the ways if you can, if you have the luxury to do so. But where you can't do it, always think about what is the most I can get from here. So there was a consulting firm, Big Four, that I worked for. I felt they used us like crazy. But I said to myself, if you can work in this environment now, no other job in the future will be this hard. And that fact has been true. Either they're just as hard as where I'm coming from, or not quite as crazy as where I'm coming from. But what I wanted to tell myself that in this situation where I'm not getting support, I will learn how to be around, or I will learn resilience. I will learn how to motivate myself when the person that meant to motivate me is not doing that. There's always something you can learn and get from every situation. Just never forget that. In fact, your biggest creativity comes from how you gain from where you think you can't gain from. We've learned it spiritually, we've learned it biblically, we've learned it in different ways and works of life, but there's always a learning in everything, okay? So that's one thing I've used to overcome where goals aren't being supported. You know, again, it even helps you set another goal. Now I'm gonna leave this company in a year's time. Now I'm gonna leave this place in 6 months' time. I'm gonna use the resilience to learn how to have difficult conversations, how to speak up for myself, how to reiterate what I want to do for myself. So you can see how pivoting, I think Esha mentioned it earlier, by pivoting and learning and seeing how something is against me, an opposition, I'm going to use that to channel a certain and unlock a certain potential in me. That's the only way I know has worked for me in the past, and I hope you can gain something from that.
Well, hey, Anthony, lots to unpack. I think the first one that jumped out to me is just do it. Don't procrastinate, just have that mind frame, just get it done. But I think, again, takeaways, there's always something to learn in every situation. And I always tell people that if we know better, we will be a lot more kind to people. If you know better, if I know Anthony could be working closely with me sometime in the future, or maybe I could be reporting to Anthony in the future, or maybe I may need Anthony in the future, I'll be kinder. If we know better, we'll be kinder, but also understanding that every situation, there's a unique thing to take. There's always a takeaway. So if we go with that mindset, with that mind frame that we're open to difficult situations as well, even a challenging, learning to have difficult conversations, because there will be situations at work or in your chosen career that you will find that it won't always go your way, and you need to find a way to win people over. How do you win people over? You need to also listening to people, being able to express yourself. Communication is key. I'm going to go to, thanks so much, Anthony. Again, there's a lot to unpack there. I'm going to go to you, Jyoti. Jyoti, perhaps you want to share, the question is around what should someone do if others around them aren't supportive of their goals?
One thing I've recognized is inherently people want to support you. Sometimes I think it's a story we tell ourselves that they don't want to support us. And I think I recognize this through the journey where I took it upon myself. And I think that's what we should do, take it upon ourselves on understanding that why don't I have the support from that person? Is it because they do not understand what I'm trying to achieve? Is it because of lack of alignment from the vision I have, the why of my goal, right? Getting alignment or support from your network within an organization or external requires investment of some of time and work to understand what are their value, what is their passion, their purpose. Is there common ground that we can find where we have, let's say, some common ground on passion or some common ground on purpose, where we see commonalities, and we can leverage that as a way of getting support. And sometimes it's also about people not recognizing that, yes, I do need their support. So while you're connecting with people and building your network, those touch points you have, uh, making a conscious effort to share what you're working towards and what you need from them for you to achieve that. Finding out a mechanism of doing that and building your support so that when I'll give a typical example. Let's say I was going through this exercise at a portfolio level within the organization where we had some operational gaps identified, which were impacting some of the projects. There was a common theme, some lessons learned across projects. And I had some recommendations on how we can solve those operational issues so that they don't end up being a roadblocker or a pain point for a project at the project level. So what we did was we came together as we had basically a working session. I shared the pain points and some recommendations and articulated for them how it will help them and make their lives easier. So basically, spend some time getting their buy-in, getting them to see that what is being recommended will make their lives easier. And not only what I'm trying to achieve is definitely clear the roadblocks for the projects, but there's something in it for them as well. And that buy-in, before getting those buy-in from those impacted parties, and then eventually when it was proposed to leadership as a solution or a recommendation, I already had the support from those areas. So it helped you move to the next step. So investing that time to get support is something I think it's on us to make sure that we spend that time to recognize. And if there are, and also give them an opportunity to raise objections. If they have a different perspective, you're listening. You just now mentioned that, listening to their perspective so that you understand where are they coming from. Maybe there's something that you can learn from it, which helps you realign your goal. Maybe that will change or shift your goal as well. So recognizing that the people you're seeking support from, at the end of the day, it's a partnership, which will help you reach your goal, and also have their buy-in so that the support is something that is willing.
Well, thanks,
Yeah.
thanks, Jyoti.
Okay.
And I think just want to recap some of the things you mentioned. Getting buy-in is key. There's something in it for everybody. Just keep that in mind. But what's more important is investing that time. It's a partnership, and there are some folks on this call that we've had conversations around. As a PM going into a new environment, sometimes it's a bit challenging to establish yourself. How do I establish myself? How do I get to drive this project when no one's listening? But then it's interesting. Sometimes you have expectation of people, but they don't have, your project is of a low priority to them. We have expectation of them. How do you get buy-in? You need to invest that time to educate people, carry people along, facilitate that alignment so that folks, by the time you bring everybody together, I think I always recommend having those one-on-ones with people, with the folks that are key stakeholders. So when you bring everybody together, it's easier to facilitate that alignment. Thanks for sharing. Again, creating time to invest in those conversation and understanding that it's a partnership. Thanks for sharing, Jyoti. We'll go to you next, Esha. Esha, last but not the least. Esha, you want to share your thoughts around, and perhaps maybe you also want to, speak to some of the things that I think we have the next question, next and final question, which is, I guess actually I'm going to take that one separately, but I'll come back to you, Esha. So if you want to speak to this piece around getting support from, if people around you are not supporting your goals.
So I think you and Jyoti has covered lots of like key nuggets over there, Ade, which I agree with. For me, it starts with me. So I have to be my own cheerleader. I have to be in that mindset that I can do this. Now, coming into those situations where, there are certain goals and you don't have that support community, I think the key thing is identifying those individuals, whether it's on your professional life or on your personal life, that will champion you or that will support you. So I think that's one of the key ways of doing those. In a professional environment, I know you mentioned one-on-one, and absolutely, walking in new, if you're someone that's consulting or a contractor, walking into a new company, the culture and the team's different. So it's key to listen and understand, looking at the dynamics of the teams, how things are happening, and identifying those key stakeholders that have the influencing and decision powers, right? That, would help you along, be that partner to make it smoother for you to deliver a certain deliverable or even run the project. So that's very, very critical. And that's what's helped me in my career, even to this day.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Esha. And I think it's important to identify those key stakeholders and find a way to invest the time to talk to them, introduce yourself, try to understand what they want. It's not always about what you want, because often we focus on what we want and not what others want. Okay, as usual, I'm going to share my thoughts. I think everything that's been shared aligns with my thought process around how to get around situations where people around you are not supportive. Often keep in mind, it's also good to understand why people may not support your goals. Sometimes it's as a result of fear. People are worried that your appearance or what you're doing might be might make you a different person, might take you away from who you were before, or whatever the situation might be. And this is now not talking just professionally, we're talking personal now. So those around you sometimes don't support your goals because they fear that you might change. They fear that you might move ahead of them. So I think it's important that we understand the concept of emotional intelligence. How do I carry people along and make my goal a collective goal so that people think, or those around you understand the concept of we're moving forward together. And also I want to tell folks on the call, if you're in a situation where those around you are not supportive, find mentors. Sometimes those around you don't have the capacity to support you. They don't have it. They have no understanding of your goals. Sometimes you have goals that people around you don't believe in it and they think it's a waste of time. So find those that are on the same path, that are willing to share. And I'll give an example myself. My wife is an entrepreneur. She's in the food space. There's only so much I can support her. I know nothing about the food space. She has mentors in the food space. She has calls with her mentors regularly. They're able to guide her. I mean, there's so much I can invest in that. I'm in meetings all day, and when I'm done, I'm like, hey, babe, I'm here. I'm cheerleader, but I can't really give her exactly what she needs. But so folks, get mentors. If you can't find people online, I know now it's a pandemic. If you can't find people on LinkedIn, hey, there are other mentors. Read books. That's the easiest way to find mentors. Read books. There are authors out there. They're willing to share their experience. They're willing to share their strategies. They're willing to tell you the loopholes and how you can get ahead. Read books, find mentors, and And, I wish you all the best. We're going to go to the next question, next and final question. And we're going to start with you first, Jyoti. Question is, what advice do you have for someone who has gotten off track this year already, or maybe gotten off track of their goal? Maybe it's a goal that they had last year, they've gotten off track. How do I get back on track?
I think the first step, if I see myself getting off track, is retrospection, looking at whether the shift in goal is still relevant. Has anything changed in my circumstances? Am I not doing enough or what is required? I refer to the smaller objectives, right? That's a measurement way of measuring whether I'm on track or not. So having that mechanism of self-assessment on an ongoing basis, whether it's biweekly, monthly, that's another area. And also, I think not achieving goals, I have a different perspective to it. I think we should expect that at some point when we are setting goals at the beginning of whenever we set our goals based on what we know then. Through that journey, as we get more information, we should expect that that goal that we had in place may shift a bit. And in some drastic situation, it may even change drastically. So I think it depends on how you define as not being on track on your goal. I think it's a matter of having that habit of assessing your goal to ensure there is realignment. There is a mechanism of measuring it on an ongoing basis, and understanding the need to tweak it so that the not achieving the goal is not a surprise. The sooner it happens, the sooner you can take steps to recalibrate and tweak your plan to get to what that goal really is. So that is why the first step in that situation would be retrospection on all these factors that I just mentioned, and having a mechanism to measure so that I can assess that whether I'm tracking to plan or not. And another way is through that assessment, what you find, being able to seek help where I recognize that I need help. So if I recognize through that assessment that, yes, I may be off track because I didn't connect with somebody, or I don't have some kind of information, or I don't have a certain skill set, then I need to seek help accordingly, either through a learning, either through a mentor, or through a network.
Okay, all right, thanks so much, Jyoti. Jyoti, and I just want to stay with you here because I know this is a final question. If you have any takeaways, anything you want to share with the audience before we wrap things up, as well, wrapping up with the final question, in addition to what you just shared, if you have any takeaways, maybe one or two nuggets.
Definitely. I think today has been an extremely enriching session. And other than what I have shared based on my experience, I've learned a lot from what Anthony, you, and Esha had to share. So I think I will share with you what I am taking away in a nutshell of what I shared, and everything is having that connectivity of why you have that goal, because I think at the end of the day, that's where that drives your passion, so that you're connected to it, you're invested in it, so you spend that energy and the effort. Second is having a plan to meet your goal in a way that you can measure it on an ongoing basis, so that you know that you're on track, you're aligned with the changing environment, changing needs, or last but not the least is seeking help, support, because all of us need help at the end of the day, whether it's personal life or a career life, to get where we want. And this is one of the things that I know that I recognized something later in life, and I always wished I had done it sooner, is building that network and having a mentor who can guide you through that journey, a coach with whom you can be a sounding board whom you can discuss things. And then, especially when you are not on track, they could advise and coach you on how you can get back on track. So that's pretty much my 3 takeaways.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Jyoti. We're going to go next to Esha. Esha, perhaps you want to share the final question is, what advice do you have for someone who has gone off track with their goal this year or last year? And also if you're able to share some of your final takeaways or thoughts for the audience.
Sure. I think, if you've gone off track, I've shared it before, it's being able to pivot. And then Jyoti actually touched based on a couple of the key points there. And if you're not able to pivot, and this is something that you must get done, then reaching out to that support system, whether it's someone that you work with or personally, could be even sometimes online resources, like, Google is your best friend. It's free, it's out there. We all have it in the tip of your finger, just finding ways to do it. Like just getting all that right resources available to you to say, okay, how can I be successful? How can I achieve that goal? And then, we touch based on procrastination, which would lead us to us missing the targets. But it's always taking that step back and understanding, okay, how can I achieve this? What are my roadblockers? Who can help me to get there? And I'm going to go into the summary of, my 3 key takeaways. And I appreciate all of the, nuggets that you have shared, and as well as the fellow panelists. I've learned a lot as always. Is the power of asking the right question, Ade. I think that is so key, whether it is whether it's a goal, whether if it's you want to do a career move. When you ask the right questions, I don't know, just something out there, whether it's the people around you or the resources that are available to you, it just kind of all falls into play. Or that if I'm not getting this currently, how do I get there? Same thing with starting with why, like Anthony mentioned, like in every aspect of our life. As well as on a personal level, if you think about it, I think most of the audience here are project management industry or the BA industry. Even in a personal life, I don't know if you thought about it, we like to plan and compartmentalize things, right? And it's always breaking it down to smaller achievable goals. So like, I'll give an example, like, if you going to my previous example of getting into a certification, say you want to get something certified in 6 months and you're supposed to finish 2 modules and you have not even started yet, then sit back and understand, okay, you know what? I should be here. I'm not there right now. What can I do? Maybe it's a time commitment. Okay, work. I cannot change my work hours. Then at home, have the negotiation. If you're living with a partner, talk to your partner. If you're living with your family, talk to the siblings or the parents or whoever to say, hey, you know what, can you take over cooking for this week? Or can you do this something? So for that weekend or after work, I need 2 hours of dedicated time to get this done. So it's coming up with those creative conversations. And I think that, again, going back to my point, starts with the asking the questions, understanding where the gaps are, what is missing, and who can help me out with it. The power of community, your support network, as well as the social network is so key and important. And just surrounding yourself with that group of people or your cheerleaders that would help you move you along, and they want to see you succeed in your life.
Okay, well, thanks so much, Esha. Thank you. There's a lot to take away from that, and really appreciate it. Again, I'm taking notes. There's a lot I'm learning. I'm just taking notes here. Really, really appreciate it, Esha. We're gonna go to Anthony. Anthony, there's a question, and also perhaps if you want to share some takeaways.
Yeah, I'm just going to flip it a little bit. Thank you again for time. It's been very, very, very insightful. Learned a lot. I will start with my nuggets and I go into the question if you don't mind. I think, relationship capital, social capital, skill capital, because it's resourceful, is actually even worth more than money. Your network, as they say, is your net worth. Don't forget that. Nobody's an island. Connect with people, share nuggets, learn and imbibe. which leads me to the two things I want to say. Be intentional in 2022. Intentional is around all the things we talked about. The meeting minutes that we get up to go do when we want to watch that next series on Netflix. The accountability is all about intentionality, really. If you have to be intentional. And don't forget that the world is no longer looking for perfect. We're looking for real. Don't need to be perfect, just be real. What is achievable? What do I need to do at this point? I will share with you that most people, there's a particular guy who I was very soon with, he got first class back at university, and he always went back to lecturers or to the faculty heads and talked about the chapters they asked to read. The question now, why did these people succeed so much? Because the feedback. Why you're off track? I asked, when I saw the question, I asked myself, so how do you even know you're off track in the first place? Because you're intentional, you're tracking, you're measuring, you're being true for yourself. And when you do go off track as well, most of the time, I've learned that people go back to realign and level set and say, okay, I'm off track because of what? If I do this, this, and that, right? I'm talking professionally now, for instance, does that mean it works out? Even personally as well, okay, what do you mean by that? If I do, what exactly will be your main thing? What are the things you're looking out for in this goal, in this to attain this goal? That usually works, and it works so much. And then personally, I've seen, I shared one very quickly experience with you. Last year, there was a project I was leading, again, that didn't meet the target or the goal that was set. And, of course, at my level, I was penalized for it. And so a friend of mine, talking through, a colleague as well, he got promotion that year, and we're talking through, and he said, last year, I also was told I was off track with a goal. And each time what I did last year was I actually went back to the partners periodically and say, hey, you said to be doing this, and I'm doing this. Is that still okay? So that's one thing I think is very, very important. Just going back to say, because sometimes, most cases, even with ourselves, we always find it difficult to map back to what we started for, that why. Very difficult, because Esha mentioned it, life happens. So today, the 22nd of January, how can you actively remember all the goals? It's really almost impossible. Let's track back. When we miss that target, let's track back to, okay, really, what were the main things I want to achieve out of this? So anyway, back to the conclusion of that story. He said, part of my feedback last year was I took feedback well. I'd never heard that before. So that meant that even as you're going off track, we've talked about resilience this year, we've talked about intentionality, accountability. Just never forget again to go back and be, I guess basically humble enough to say, out of the 50 different things I'll get done, if I do 5 of this, the Pareto rule, 80 that will count to the 20 or 20 will count to the 80, whichever one look at it. What are the important things that I really want to do this year? I want to move forward as one, as a theme. I want to move forward, whichever that means. Jyoti shared with us very respectfully how she wants to increase her network. The whole thing about what we want to do is to make sure we look back in December 2022 and say, I've achieved X, Y, Z. Never forget that. Don't be perfect, be real, be intentional. And as you fall off the track again, just remember again, at the end of the day, I just want to try and do something better than I was yesterday. I want to be a better version of myself than I was. That's really what we're trying. That's the quest. I'll never forget that. And I thank you for your time.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Anthony. And thank you again. There's a lot to take away from this conversation. We do appreciate the time, and we thank you again for this powerful presentation and nuggets that you shared with us today. And we thank all the panelists. Again, folks, there's a lot to unpack, and I do want to thank all the participants of today's PM Roundtable. There's a lot to take away. I took notes myself. I know it starts with why, the reason why you're doing what you're doing, the reason why you want to achieve those goals. You want to make sure your goals are smart. You want to, there's power in networking. You also have to find balance. Balance is key. You want to be able to pivot, measure your goals, have that health check, impact and value, those two things Esha and Anthony shared. Jyoti shared the concept of visualizing your goals and finding your accountability partner. And just do it. We talked about Nike, just do it. what's also important is being able to seek help, get mentors, ask the right questions, and most importantly, be intentional about your goals, because we need to be intentional about what we're trying to achieve. Keep in mind, again, we talked about this earlier, self-doubt happens a lot, but keep in mind, once you're intentional about those goals and you write them down and you have those vision board, you have that vision board, helps you remind yourself as to why you're achieving this goal. You want to achieve those goals. So we, again, I just want to say a big thank you to the panelists and all the participants of today's PM Roundtable. OLED Consulting were really appreciative. This avenue is designed to build leaders, want to grow leaders, want folks within our community to become leaders that can impact their own community or their own industries. And we hope that today's webinar has further that agenda or that mission. So we do want to hear from you. Follow us on social media at OLED Consulting. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, and we're on Facebook. Again, I'd like to say a big thank you to all the panelists and the participants of today's roundtable. Until next time, bye for now. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Everyone.